Hello, everyone, and welcome to our day early comics review video. I'm Jason,
I'm Andy.
and we're with Infinity Flux Comics out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, where every single Monday after the comics have been delivered to our shop, we bag them, we board them, and then we divide them up. And Andy and I, we read the ones that we're most looking forward to. We read all the number ones, all the ones we think people really want to hear about, and then we do what we call our spoiler light reviews. We're going to tell you about first appearances and major collectability reasons you might want these comics. But more than that, especially with the number ones, we're going to tell you what they're about. We're going to tell you the art style, what the writing is like, so that when you go in your store, we're trying to connect the right people with the right comics.
Right.
That's what we're doing. Every week, there's 10 to 20 new books out, actually more some weeks.
Yeah.
So that is our goal. I think this week it's a little on the medium to light side. I think all said and done, we're going to have gone over 16 or 17 books. We're going to show off all their variants, the incentives. We got the first few in front of us. But before we launch into that, if you watch Comics from the Future, you probably know that we have launched a website finally. People have been asking us for this for ages. So this website, we're not yet selling the new comics. We're going to get to that. We are pre-selling comics to come.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's comics that you can order. You can subscribe to series. You can just get particular issues. I just want to show it real quick. So basically, our website is at infinityflux.net. And there is a way where you can set up a pull box so that you can order comics through us. It's very, very simple. Create an account. Then when you go to comic subscriptions, you can search for comics. You can go to last call, which is the comics that are pre-selling. You can easily scroll through. You can do it by publisher. When you click on something, you can very easily either subscribe to the entire series or you can just pre-order a cover. It is that simple. So if you don't have a store that you're currently using, um, give it, think about us.
Yeah.
All right, so Andy, what are we going over first?
So going over first is a long-awaited book. I should have looked up when this was first kind of teased. I remember them talking about doing a series about Blade's daughter
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah, it's I think at least 2 years ago
Yes.
they announced things about this.
So Brielle is her name. This is Bloodline Daughter of Blade #1. And her first appearance was actually in a free comic book day book, I think from a year or two ago.
Yeah,
It's been a little while, but this is her origin. So it's very interesting. We get Brielle. We see her kind of as a younger kid and snooping around. Not really snooping, but in her mom's bedroom, and she finds a book that has photos in it, and of course one of them is of Blade. And she kind of recognizes that this is her father, but she doesn't know anything about Blade, the vampire hunter. And her mom says, "Yeah, that's your father," and kind of dismisses it. Well, we jump in time to about when Brielle's in high school, and she was a great student. She's still a great student, but her interests are shifting, and so much so that they have to have a parent teacher meeting to be like, hey, she used to be really into sports, she used to really be into all this stuff. Her grades haven't dropped, she just has stopped doing a lot of this stuff. And well, what do you think that's all about? Well, upon leaving this, they get ambushed by a vampire. And what do you know it? Both Brielle and her mom know how to take this vampire down, to the surprise of each other that the other one knows how to do it. So we're starting to learn a little bit about this family. We get some more history about her father Blade and how she came about. And this issue is not without Blade also, because in the last few pages you will see Blade and you'll be seeing what he is doing, and maybe how much he knows about his kind of current family that is off somewhere. So, if you're looking for a new character to jump onto, this is great. I feel like you're going to be seeing this character a lot. She just feels like she would fit in with a lot of different teams, and very marketable. She's likable. She's smart. She's a little Buffy the Vampire Slayer, being like a teenage vampire slayer with a really cool family. So I thought it was really good, a great start, but I'm looking forward to the next issue when we actually get into this was more of the setup and people kind of confused about, oh, you know about this, but then the next issue, it looks like we're gonna get some actual like vampire hunting action.
Does Brielle have any powers other than what Blade has?
Uh, so it's hard to tell, and I even saw that there was a report about like maybe a new power is introduced. Um, Not necessarily that I noticed. You do see her kind of take out a vampire, but
She doesn't have like a psychic wooden knife.
no, she uses the basic wooden stakes and everything they all do. I could have missed it, um, but not from what I could see. But I think this is a great issue if you're looking for a new character to jump on board with. Bloodline, Daughter of Blade is a very cool one.
You don't miss much when you read comics, Andy. If
No,
you didn't see it, it probably was not there.
we've got some cool variants for this. They're not using Blade a lot too. He's in Midnight Suns, the video game, all this stuff.
Well,
So
Blade 3 is going to happen.
yeah.
New Blade
The
movie.
new Blade movie is definitely churning. So we've got this wolf variant. It's very cool. I'll be interested to see the first time they meet. That's going to be a pretty cool moment. We have this really cool Stegman variant.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
This one's
Looking
great.
very fierce. His eyes.
Talk about fierce, fierce like a cat, because we have the Chrissy Zulo cat variant.
Her first ongoing book and already
Already she's a cat.
variant.
And first ongoing book and already has a Ron Lim variant. So it's like welcome to the Marvel Universe. You got a Ron Lim variant. Next up you need a Todd Knock headshot variant. You're in. Like that's you passed your two variant.
What about
thing.
Scotty Young?
Okay, we gotta get a baby one and
Yep.
then maybe eventually an Alex Ross. But
Okay, so the first one I'm going to go over is DC Power: A Celebration. This is the DC anthology book they're doing for Black History Month, which features a lot of black superheroes, and all the creators and artists on this are also black. So this is pretty cool. There are 9 stories in this, so it's very big.
Mhm.
It's like more than double size. So it's 9.99, but 9.99 for 9 stories. You're paying a little over $1 a story, $1.10 a story.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, so I read through all of them. Let me give you a little teaser on each one. So the first story is about Amazing Man, and it's him back in World War II. He actually wasn't in comics back then, but
Mhm.
you can retcon how long a
Yeah.
character's been around. I think he's been around since the 80s. But it's him back in World War II, and then sort of how he's treated and how the world is towards him as a black superhero after the war.
Mhm.
That story is really good. The next story, you got a Black Lightning and Thunder story.
Cool.
You don't see the two of them together too often. Thunder, of course, is Black Lightning's daughter. Then you have a story with Nubia and Bumblebee versus Mansoor Mala.
Oh, I love him.
I was going to ask if you knew. I think
Yeah,
you would know who
Monsieur
Mansoor
Mala
Mala
and
is.
and his partner, the Brain.
Yeah, so who, of course, is one of the DC smart gorillas.
You gotta love DC's love of gorillas.
Yes. Then there's the story with John Stewart, which you see his past as a kid and how he used to be bullied,
Mm.
and how he draws from that pain to be so strong later in life. And these are stories I like to read when I was younger.
Yeah.
So build you up, build you some character. Then there's a Kid Flash and Jackson Hyde story, and it's one where they're kind of first meeting and they fight, but through everything they find some friendship. There's a Cyborg story where Cyborg goes up against Livewire.
Oh, I
And
like the electricity and the
yes,
power.
yes. And if that's not good enough, it ends sort of introducing the ongoing upcoming Cyborg series. The Dawn of the DC Cyborg series is sort of introduced
Mhm.
by this. Then there's a Batwing story. Luke Fox's Batwing. You don't see that
Yeah.
hardly ever. He kind of did it in Harley Quinn
Yeah.
a little while ago, but it's Batwing and Vixen go up against Black Manta. And then the last 2 stories are actually reprints, but they're ones I think a lot of people miss. The first one, which was actually really good, I read it the first time around. It was from Batman Black and White #3. It's that
Mhm.
story from Future State where next Batman is saved by Tiffany Fox, who appears to be a new Robin in the
Yes,
future.
that was a very big issue.
Right, and they don't call her Robin, but it's pretty clear. And then the last story is a reprint out of Far Sector number 5. There's also, I think, 7 full page pinups at the end of different characters. So that is what you could get for $9.99 for DC Power: A Celebration. Tried to keep it as brief as I could. And then there is this Soza Mecha variant for it as well.
Very cool. Okay, next up for me is our next entry in the Lazarus Planet. This is DC Universe Lazarus Planet Legends Reborn #1 one shot. I always love when they put the #1 and one shot, because of course. So each of these has kind of had a theme, which I think is really smart. That they're doing when you have all these tie-ins. It's like, okay, kind of give each of the tie-ins a theme, or like what are the characters we're going to go over. This is a week of DC anthologies too, because I think you got another one coming
I
up.
do.
This is a anthology style story. So we got a few, and this one is more about how the long-standing heroes are changed, or their world is changed a little bit because of the Lazarus reign. You'll see what I'm talking about. So first up, we have a story by Alex Segura and Clayton Henry about Renee Montoya, who I feel like we see, but not. She hasn't been spotlighted in quite a
No.
while.
Yeah, she'll just enter stories
Yeah.
and
So in this one, there is some kind of mysterious cases going around Gotham, and Batman is tied up with all the Lazarus Planet stuff and all the stuff going on with him, and so she decides to retake on the mantle of the Question to go investigate. That's a really cool story. Then we have a Raven and Beast Boy story, which is super cool. Having those two team up in this, there seems to be some kind of demonic transformation, maybe some demons that got hit with the Lazarus reign, and they're transforming, and Raven's going to go try and figure out what's going on. The key to this issue, this story, is it seems like we may be introduced to a sibling of Raven called Trilogy. So that's really cool. You'll have to see how that comes about. But you know that her dad is somewhere in the background scheming all of this.
I'm trying to think of what powers a character named Trilogy would have.
And he's not like looks like a normal guy. He looks like a little Trigon with the four eyes and everything. So it's very interesting. I'll say probably, I mean, definitely my favorite story out of here, but probably one of my favorite stories out of all the comics this week was the one about City Boy. And we saw City Boy in a previous, the kind of Lazarus Planet one shot. They kicked all this off. But he has the ability to communicate with cities. This is written by Greg Pak and the artist by Minkyu Jung. And what happens when he comes to Gotham? So he kind of seems to be using his powers, one for personal gain. He basically like touches the ground, and you see a little bit of a map almost, but it kind of draws him to items that are left around the city. So he ends up pulling up a batarang, and he's like, "Oh, this is a great toy batarang. I can probably sell this and get some lunch." He's kind of a scavenger, but a little bit better because he can tell what's in the city and locate it. Well, that's all great until he gets struck by Lazarus lightning, and this boosts his power quite a bit to where now uh a little, I think we see it on one of the covers, but a little garbage creature comes out. It looks like a little mouse, but it's made of like water bottles and string and all of that. I won't reveal what that is, because I think that was one of the coolest reveals of the story, but his powers are enhanced, and now he can get a lot more of the city and move through the city a lot better. And this has caught the attention of Nightwing. So you've this is was a super cool story. I think his powers are really really cool, and especially how he uses them. But the thing about what the little mouse thing is, I think, is even more interesting where that could go. Then we get a story about Firestorm. In this, we actually get introduced to a new version of Firestorm, because Firestorm is made of two people.
Right.
Well, one of them is not there, so they have to join up and create a new version of Firestorm. You'll have to read it to find out who. Professor Stein is kind of out of action, so you'll have to see what happens there. That one's really cool. They fight some shadow demons. And yeah, I think that's all the stories in this one. So I thought this one was really good, but especially for that City Boy story. And I'm very interested to see where he comes up next. He's almost cool enough. I wouldn't mind him having just his own mini series or something, exploring some of the stuff that was brought up in here. So this is our main cover. We have this super nice Laura Braga Raven variant. I feel like Raven is more popular than ever. We've got this Mink Minkyu June variant with City Boy, and you can see on his shoulder that little garbage mouse. Very cool, and that's your interior artist on that story. So if you like that, that's about what it looks like.
I wouldn't let that thing on my shoulder.
I like when something happens and a character appears, and even your hero's like, what is that?" Like we're kind of freaked out by it. Then we have this Sarmento Firestorm variant, and lastly we have this 1 in 25 Brown variant with Renee Montoya. We're selling for $15.
Okay, so I read Miles Morales Spider-Man issue number 3, third issue of the brand new ongoing series. This cover shows Miles sort of at the mercy of his new enemy, Rabble. So the first thing I'll say is this may happen in the future, but this does not happen in the issue. In fact, the climax of this issue is they first, not exactly first, because they kind of met briefly in the first issue, but they meet up in a, okay, we're going to battle way. That's sort of the climax, but it's all the stuff that leads up to it. So this, of course, is written by the relatively newer creative team on this, Cody Ziegler with Federico Vincentini doing the art. And in this, we get Rabble's story. We get to find out why she hates Miles, why specifically she blames him for her misfortunes and miseries. I'm not saying I agree with her. Like, you will see why. I think it's like, really? Wow, you're really hyper focused on this person. But it makes sense. I just, I don't know. It makes you mad at her. I guess
Yeah.
that's what I would say. I saw the reason. It's like, really, I'm not happy with you about this. Meanwhile, Miles and Misty Knight, who teamed up last issue, continue their battle against Scorpion, who's been upgraded, probably by Rabble. And so that fight goes on and on and on. So that's what's going on in Miles Morales, Spider-Man issue number 3. You get to find out what Rabble's problem is. We've got some nice variants for that. We have this Sue graffiti variant. It's very nice and colorful. Then we have the Stegman does a Planet of the Apes variant.
That's really cool.
And lastly, we have this 1 in 25 Lashley variant that we're selling to our customers for $25.
And I have a new indie book this week. This is Nightwalker from Source Point Press. Nightwalkers. And what's interesting about this is by Cullen Bunn. So if it's by Cullen Bunn, you already have a level of like, it's going to be good. Like, he writes solid, solid horror. And this is another great entry into that. Say, especially what this does that I appreciate. I went into it thinking one thing, like I saw the cover, I see the title. I'm thinking zombies
I'm thinking vampires.
or vampires. It doesn't seem like it's either of those. So off the bat, I'm like, that's great. Like, I've read a lot of those stories. Give me something different. So, this follows a girl named Saren who is in a rehab center. I don't know if we technically get like all the reasons why she's there, um, but she's kind of over it. She kind of has the feeling like I keep coming back here and my parents keep paying for it, and that's all this center wants. They just want the money. They don't really care about my well being or anything. There's a lot of other people there too, but she's kind of got that attitude. Well, one day, the all the staff are basically like, "Hey, we got to do lights out early, so you got 10 minutes. You got to be in your rooms." Everyone thinks it's really weird, and when she wakes up late. No one came calling to wake her up for like the morning activities, and that's when all of the patients there figure out all the staff is gone. What's going on? They don't have their phones because that was taken from them in the beginning. So this sets up kind of a mystery of like what's going on outside of this place, which it's hard to get out of. It's kind of built so no one can escape from. Well, some end up do figuring out a way out, and some think it's better for us to stay here. But seems like there is something in the surrounding woods that is kind of monstrous, and you have to read to find out what happens. But uh, even if it is a vampire or something vampiric or whatever, there's a spin on it by whatever this thing is, what it says. So you'll have to see. But I actually thought it was really good. Quality Cullen Bunn characters, dialogue, and kind of horror situations. The art is by Picardo, and if you're familiar with like Sorrentino's art, very lifelike but very moody and dark. That is what the art style is. Very much like this cover. So I thought it was really good. It's a great starting off point for a very interesting series with a very interesting hook that's different than what I was expecting. So I'm on board to read the next one, and we just have the one cover for it. So
All right, so I read a indie number one as well. This is Blood Tree number one, which this is by, look at the imprint there. It's Image, but below it, it's Mad Ghost. Mad Ghost is Jeff Johns' imprint.
yep,
So it's the one that he does Geiger and those comics from. So what this is about, or I guess I should talk about the creative team. This is by Peter Tomasi with art by Maxim Simic. And what this is about is it's a New York City detective. If you're a New York City detective, your life is just full of things. That's what TV and media has taught me. So the detective's name is Arazo. And when a body falls off a skyscraper, landing dead in the middle of a parade, that's not the weirdest part of it. The weirdest part of it is that this body has grafted wings on it. Now these are not real wings, but it's made to make the body look like an angel. So as strange as that is, another situation like this happens a few days later. So obviously a string of things that he's investigating now. And at each crime scene, a very mysterious message is found, which you'll have to read for yourself if you pick up the issue. So I think this is sort of religion mixed with crime, mixed with thriller, maybe a little bit of horror.
hmm
That's the sense I get from issue number one. You get a lot into the detective's life as well. But me telling you about that's not really the meat of the plot. So as far as the art style, it's sort of what I would describe as just sort of your standard comic art style. It's just sort of what you expect from an American comic. It's like the cover, but a lot less detailed. You
the
know,
cover I believe is Gary Frank. So
yeah, they put Gary Frank, yeah,
yeah,
a lot more detail. It's like that, but dial back the detail because they've got to do all the panels on the inside and everything. So that is sort of the premise for Blood Tree, and there is just one variant. This is the Frank and Anderson variant for that issue, and it's ongoing. I forgot to mention that this is
that's
an ongoing series.
okay. Next up for me, I have a new Star Wars book. Yes, this is a Star Wars Santa Starros #1. This is a new mini series following comic origined Santa Starros. Her first appearance, I believe, was in Dr. Aphra. No, it was in Star Wars because she was claiming that she was Han's wife.
Oh, right. Yes, yes.
Yeah, that was a very people were all up in arms about that until you find out the full story. But very fun character. Later, she teamed up with Dr. Aphra a lot. But this is focusing just on her. So Sana is going around with her kind of like work partner. He's just kind of like the pilot of the ship and everything. His name is Jand, and he's got this mission for them to go on. It's all going well until she realizes maybe the prize at the end is not really worth all the effort it took. She's real tired now. This clearly has been going on for a while, and she's like, "I need a break. I'm gonna go back home." So this is definitely a family story, but a family we haven't seen ever. So we get to learn more about Santa, where she's from, and the kind of the people that raised her. So she goes back to her home planet. And to the compound of her family, but that's not before she has to get past the security of her own family's house. That is a lot of fun. You get to get a lot of your action, but you meet a lot of her family. So this is going to be the first appearance of her grandmother Thea, uh, her cousin uh, Mauricia, and her aunt Mavera, and everything's going good, but they get attacked by stormtroopers. What has drawn the stormtroopers to this just seemingly kind of innocent family's house? You'll have to read it to find out. But there is a tie between the family and the Empire that maybe Sana didn't know and is not too happy about, and this is going to lead her to a big adventure at the end of it. Um, you also get a Imperial kind of leader named Sirius Elo, which could after this be one of the most hated Star Wars characters. You just have to. It's one thing to be like Darth Vader. It's another thing to be a uh, bad guy who takes on a grandma and people like that. Like that's a new low for the Empire. So you'll have to see that. It's a very entertaining issue, a lot of fun. Uh, Quite a few first appearances. I don't know if they'll be any bigger than this one miniseries, but if you're looking for a new Star Wars book, this is a great new miniseries to start with. We've got some great covers for this as well. We've got this Sarah Pacelli variant, and we have this Manahini variant, which actually that on the cover is Fel Starros. That is her brother, who does not appear in the issue. So this could be the first appearance, unless I'm mistaken. He may have appeared in one of the other series, but that's very interesting.
Okay, so Andy was saying it's a DC anthology week, and it is. Now, I don't know why DC didn't spread these out, but here's another anthology out this week. It is DC's Harley Quinn Romances with this wonderful Amanda Connor cover with Harley just looking totally manic and silly and Bugs Bunny crazy, maybe even old Daffy Duck crazy. That I think that's more it. She
Yeah.
she looks more like old Daffy Duck crazy before he got in his war with Bugs Bunny. Um, I went on about that way too long. So this is an anthology. It's 9.99. It is, once again, at least triple size. There are 8 different stories in it. Some of them I found very amusing. The first story right out the gate is great because Harley Quinn has sort of busted into a party that she wanted to attend and that Ivy's at. And, Ivy's like, "What are you doing here?" And Harley's like, "I love parties. That's why. But I have other reasons." Meanwhile, as the reader, you're like, "Why is Ivy here?" So that's sort of the A story part of that. The B story part is that Harley has done a fanfic that she shows Ivy in parts. So the story pauses as you keep getting bits of this fanfic story where they're in high school together. Joker is like football player and he's got punchline on his arm. They're kind of warring over something. The fanfic is really really funny. It's done like Harley drew it. It's on lined paper. The art style completely shifts. But you also get to find out in the A story why Ivy is there, which of course has to do with crime. So a lot going on in just the first story. The second story is Batman is patrolling Gotham on Valentine's Day. Of course, he doesn't have anywhere to be. Protecting the night is his Valentine, and he ends up having to protect this couple. And it gets very like heavy for them because they're like in the Batmobile proposing to each other. They start making out in the Batmobile, and a lot goes on. But a lot of it is they try to invite Batman to the wedding after all is said and done, and he does not want to go. but wait until the end. You know, in a way, he might actually attend. So some of the other stories there, we have a great story where Superman sets up Power Girl, who's his cousin,
Mm.
on a blind date with Jimmy Olsen.
Oh.
But it's not Jimmy Olsen with Power Girl, it's her in her secret, in her normal identity,
Mm.
which how can he not know? How
Yeah.
can he not know? Then there's John Constantine sets up a friend who might not even be alive on a date. I feel like
Mm.
that's nice for them, but not so nice for the other person.
Yeah.
Then there's a story with Fire and Ice using a dating app. There's a story with Midnighter and Apollo. And then there's a great story where Kite Man imagines himself as he reads a book to be the Fabio character of this romance novel. But it's him and all the ways his life would change and blossom if he could just be a Fabio type person. And the last one is a bunch of DC heroines get together for a Galentine's Day event. They don't have guys, they're all going to hang out, and they start trading stories about Aquaman, meeting him and how like hot he is, and their interactions
So
that
it's a bit
all
of the
too
cover.
brief. Yeah, that are all too brief with Aquaman. So anyway, it was good for 9.99. If those sound good, I really enjoyed reading this one quite a bit.
And they're all pretty much comedy stories.
Yeah, they are. It's lighthearted. And here is the Pulaski variant.
A romance
Yep.
novel.
Speaking of, yeah, the old style Harley Quinn romance covers.
Okay, next up for me, I have a new Batman one shot that does not feature Batman. So this is Batman Legends of Gotham one shot. This is by Andy Diggle and the art is by Carl Mostert. And I would say this would better be titled like either Red Hood and the Outsiders, probably. So in this, we begin with Red Hood basically trying to break into the Batcave. We find out it's just because like all the passwords have been changed because they don't want him in there. But this actually harkens back to a lot of previous stories, like the Leviathan stuff with Leviathan and all of the um, kind of secret organizations in the DC universe, Argus and all of that. And when all of that went down, a cache of information was stolen, and it is going to be auctioned off to all of these villains. And what's included in there is information about Batman, his secret identity, and everything. How they got that, I'm not sure, but uh, Red Hood is looking for a way to kind of infiltrate this and get it back. And he's going to have the help of a few of the outsiders. So we have Black Lightning and Katana, who are going to be helping him do this. This has a thing I love, which is a supervillain auction, where you get to see who attends and what do they bid and all of that. And what's kind of a key to this is it has all of the information about the villains too in this information. So the auctioneer basically says like whoever gets it, your identity will remain a secret, but you'll know who everybody else is. And so of course you've got a bunch of people vying for this, including Bane, including Condiment King. Condiment King starts out the bid at $10 and is quickly outbid with $1 billion. But you get to see who's all involved, like Mercy Gray's Lex Luthor's um, bodyguard. You've got Bane. You've got a bunch of these key characters trying to get this information, and we kind of have to see who it goes to, and then do they actually stop it? Because it feels like this story could maybe continue on in some form somewhere else, especially given this kind of new version of this team. So it is just a one-shot story. It does have a beginning and end. Uh, but I thought it was a really interesting one to bring out now. Great cast of characters. If you're a Red Hood fan, Outsiders fan, you'll really like this. Just a one shot. Batman Legends of Gotham #1. We've got some variants for that as well. We've got this Zerdy variant with Katana. And we have this 1 in 25 Nakayama variant. It's a very nice, and we are selling this to our customers for $15.
Okay, so I read Moon Knight issue number 20. This issue has a cool little thing on the cover where it says, plus a story guest starring Blade. So this actually has two different stories in it. And of course, this is by our regular team of Jed McKay and Alessandro Capuccio. Another great issue of Moon Knight, of course. So it begins where there's these two mysterious assassins who are killing sort of ex-informants of Moon Knight. It's people back from his shadow gallery. So if you read Mark Spector Moon Knight way back then,
Mm.
he kind of dissolved that shadow gallery back at the last issue, issue 60. Well, anyway, they are just killing them all in one night. And Moon Knight and his team learn about this, and they kind of figure a pattern to it, and they try to get ahead of it. And they want to know who these assassins are, which they do run into them. And some sites are reporting these assassins are new, maybe a first appearance. It is not. They are known people. They're not. They haven't been in comics in a while though, and they claim they're doing it. They're taking orders from beyond the grave. That's their
Mhm.
claim. And so, how is Moon Knight going to get this information out of them? Because beating them is not going to help. Nope, it's going to take good old psychology. And so, this is not resolved this issue. This is sort of the beginning of this arc. The second story, it is a flashback to when Blade and Moon Knight first meet. So, of course, they met ages ago,
Yeah.
and so they're dressed in their old outfits.
Okay.
Blade, in particular, his outfit is definitely from its era,
Yeah.
and you get to see how they kind of learn to respect one another. But then it goes to the present, where Moon Knight has to ask Blade for a favor that he thinks only Blade would be the best at, that relates to our current cast of characters. So, pretty cool issue, as usual. Here are the variants. We have the tan variant. We have this really awesome Allen Black History variant featuring Blade. And lastly, we have the Sandoval Planet of the Apes variant.
It's not a mashup you think you would ever see as Moon Knight and Planet of the Apes.
It's a lot of words, planet, apes, moon,
Okay,
knights, like
yeah.
just a lot of strange words colliding there.
Next up, we have another new #1 from Marvel for this miniseries. This is Silver Surfer Ghostlight. So, Silver Surfer Ghostlight is a very interesting book. I definitely feel like it was different than I expected. I expected a heavy Silver Surfer book. It is not that. We are actually introduced to a young girl named Tony who has moved into a new house with her family. It's kind of that classic, like, I don't like it here. All my friends are back there. Um, but they seemed like they were maybe gifted this house by a relative that they just call Al. And now, if you kind of know the backstory of what this book is about, you can maybe figure that out. But it's more about Tony and her brother exploring this house, these grounds, and they discover a secret laboratory with some weird machines. And you know what happens? You start pressing buttons, and a signal goes out into space. But what is it calling? So that's basically what it is. As you can expect, somebody sees the signal, but something else happens too, and that's where our ghost-like character comes into it, who seems like he's going to be, at least in the beginning, maybe not a good guy, or maybe just confused. Um, so I don't know if I want to say who he is, because the name Ghostlight is not even said in this, and who he is not said. If you've read about it, it does give it away, but if you haven't, I'll let you discover that for yourself. So it is very Silver Surfer and Ghostlight light, but I think the next issue we're going to get a lot more of those characters. So I thought it was very interesting, very different than what I expected, but still very good, introducing some new characters. This is the A cover. Then we have the Turin Clark Planet of the Apes variant, which I really like. we have the Marco Cicchetto variant as well.
Okay, so I read another indie number one. It is Almighty number one by Edward LaRoche. He does the writing, he does the art, and this is a 5 issue miniseries. So, what is Almighty about? The first thing to say is it's set in 2098 in the US, where 40 years before this story begins, there's an environmental disaster on the West Coast, and this one part of the West Coast builds this huge wall, and they're calling their area Zone One. So they go behind a wall where outside the wall things get really bad. We're talking post-apocalyptic Mad Max. Motorcycle gangs, militias, all those things. Well, a girl from Zone One has been kidnapped, and to save her, a known killer is hired. And so you kind of start where she's trying to escape from the people who have got her. The person hired to save her shows up, and you just kind of they're getting to know each other, and you're getting to know them at the same time, sort of situation, and a lot of sort of world building, getting to see just sort of the scary people who are living in this outside the wall part. um, I like the art a lot. The coloring especially has a lot of mood to it. All the scenes are lit different ways to add a lot of different mood. So I thought if you like the cover, the interior art is really good as well. That is the general premise for Almighty. Again, it's just a 5 issue miniseries, and there is no variant for it. Not that we don't have one. They did not make a variant for this. So if you get this cover, that's it.
You got it all.
Yep.
Okay, next up, I've got our final part of Dark Web. This is Dark Web Finale number one.
Not Omega.
Not Omega.
Somebody's like, Latin schmat.
Yeah, we've gotten that. But we do want to make this final issue a number one. You're not going to get a number two of this. Let me tell you. So I've really liked Dark Web. I thought, especially the Spider-Man parts, have been a lot of fun. It didn't take itself too seriously, and that continues through this. So we've got our cast of characters now kind of all converging. So at the beginning it split up. You could kind of follow the X-Men storyline with Madeline Pryor, and you could follow the Spider-Man story with Chasm and all the craziness going on there. This pulls them all back together because in the last one, there was kind of a falling out between Chasm and Goblin Queen, and now Chasm is kind of the main villain here. But he does have Madeline Pryor's kind of scepter scythe thing that you rule Limbo with.
Yep.
So now it is up to all of the X-Men and all of the Spider characters that have been in this to take on Chasm and his demonic hordes. But it's still very fun. It's still there's some good jokes in there. We've still got Wreck Rap, who's the weird demon Spider-Man who's just big and goofy. I thought this was a lot of fun. It is mostly action, which I do really like for this finale. It kind of felt like it was building up to that. But we also get a lot of good moments, like with Hallows Eve and Chasm, because they were a couple, and you get to see kind of how does that couple translate into this villainous form. Um, uh, so also this does wrap it up really well. There is some loose threads, but I feel like they're loose threads that they put out there that they could come back to later with some characters. Uh, we get a very interesting conclusion to what's going on with Chasm that I think was well earned. So that's really fun. But the other big thing that happens to this is the New York skyline gets a new building. You'll have to read it to find out, but I really hope this is brought up in other things because it's very fun. It has to do with a limbo, so you have to check that out. The city couldn't go off unscathed by everything that's happened, but you still get jokes in this too, like a talking mailbox is like, "Does anybody have any mail?" and stuff like that. It's just a lot of fun. But great finale of Dark Web, and I'm looking forward to
Are
seeing.
Mary Jane and Black Cat in it anywhere?
Don't think so.
Okay.
Uh,
Like, I guess in their own series, we're going to see what they've been up to.
yeah, and it's also interesting too because that series kind of just started. It's got quite a bit more to
I
go.
suggest at the beginning only part would probably be in black
Yeah,
in dark web, and then the rest would go outside of it.
yes. So if you wanted to wrap up that series, this is your final issue of that. We've also got the Paco Medina variant. And it's great seeing the X-Men and Spider-Man work together. It's I'd say it's a little bit leans heavier on Spider-Man, but you still got Cyclops and Jean and Magic and all of them there. That's a lot of fun. We've got a Peach Momoko variant as well. Very cool.
Okay, so I read Flash 1 Minute War Special. So if you've been reading Flash or you've been picking up the 1 Minute War stuff, I would grab this for sure. If you have not, I would not grab this. This will not make any sense to you if you haven't been reading the other stuff. Okay, so this is just a one shot because this event's big enough. They just needed to do a little bit more. This is neat. This is written by the regular Flash team. You know, it's Jeremy Adams and Fernando Pasarin. And this is told in four different stories. One is past, two are present, and the fourth one is future. So the past story is showing the past of the faction. That is the aliens who have attacked. You're seeing what happened on their planet to turn them into these people who go to other planets to take over and steal all the organic riches. So you get to find out they're not just like wake up one day, let's be evil. We're powerful, we're evil. They have some crises of
Mm.
their own to deal with that push them this way. That's not a good way to go. It doesn't let them off the hook, but it's nice to know, that these villains are fleshed out that way. The two present stories, the first one, a speedster has been trapped on one of the faction's ships, and you get to see how the speedster kind of fares going up against them. The other present story, which is really cool, is the faction on Earth. They think they can take over pretty easy. They don't know about all the speedsters there quite yet. And they come upon one of the Flash's greatest enemies, who typically you never want to see this enemy, in anything because they just are trouble. But maybe they'll be on the side of Earth this time.
Hmm.
So, and the last story, which is really interesting, it's set in the future where Jay, the son of Wally West,
Mhm.
Jai, is grown up, and so he's a grown up speedster now, and it's him and Gold Beetle teaming up against the faction.
Cool.
Yeah, so
I like how
so
Gold Beetle kind of pops up just very
I
randomly
didn't see
throughout
it coming,
stuff.
and it doesn't start with him either. Gold Beetle definitely is like enters the
Yeah.
story, and so that's what's going on. And also no variant. It's just a one shot. It's you can tell they're doing it for the reader,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Very cool. Next up, I've got Scarlet Witch #2. So I really like how Steve Orlando is framing this story or kind of the mold of this story because we had the first issue. We learned that Scarlet Witch now has this kind of store of oddities that she's running, and there's a door in there, and if people come through that door, it means like they're at their lowest, and she can attempt to help them. Uh, we've also got Darcy there working for her, which is really cool still. So we got the first story, and at the end of that one, we saw who walked through the door, but Viv Vision, the the very complicated daughter of Scarlet Witch, kind of. They definitely talk about that of like how are we actually related? Um, Viv's mom was made from a copy of Scarlet Witch's brain, so she kind of is like an adoptive mother. It they talk about it, but Viv has been having nightmares, a robot having nightmares about what happened to her family from the Vision series.
Very Philip K. Dick.
Yes,
Do robots have nightmares too?
there's no electric sheep in there, uh, but so she's been having these nightmares about what happened to them, and she talks about her time with the champions, how they definitely helped her with it, but her grief is comes and goes. So it's a very personal story. Wanda definitely understands a lot about grief and a lot about that. But to figure out what exactly is going on, they are both going to sleep, and Scarlet Witch is going to go into Viv's mind to figure out what is going on. So we actually see what is Viv's android dreams like. Very cool, very weird, very key, but also a lot of references to the Vision series, which I think is really cool. That that hasn't been talked on too much lately, and so we go back and we see bits of that. Um, there is a villain that does pop up in this, and I'll say it's a villain that I had never heard of, but they're real, but I just never crossed paths with them reading things before, so I thought that was really interesting. Uh, and like the other one, the door opens and somebody else walks through that you're gonna have to check out next issue. So I kind of like this, you get a hint of what's the next one going to be like. There's also a backup story in here where Storm teams up with Scarlet Witch, and I don't know. I just think that's a really cool pairing. It's just a couple pages, but very fun. So
Omega level meets Omega level.
yes, I just I don't know. Wanda is a really cool character now. I like the direction they're taking her. Sarah Bocelli's art in this is amazing as well. So here is our A cover. We've got our Garbett Planet of the Apes variant. Those apes do not stand a chance. We've got this Stormbreakers CF Villa variant with a tiny Scarlet Witch in her big book. And then we have this Sousa Black History Month variant as well. But it fits because there is a Storm story in here.
Okay, so if you're going to read that Dark Web finale and you're also getting this Venom issue 16, I highly suggest you read the Venom 16 first. I mean, it's not going to ruin your week if you read them out of order, but this one definitely comes first. This is written by Al Ewan with art by Brian Hitch, and it is part of Dark Web and happens directly before the final part, which I haven't read yet, but based on your review, I could definitely see this happens first. So, and the fact that you said finale.
Yeah.
But okay, so this has Dylan as Codex has teamed up with Normie, who is now Red Goblin again, and Ms. Marvel, who popped in at the end of last issue. They're all there as Normie and Codex are trying to fight Eddie Brock, who is it's the form of Eddie Brock that is Bedlam. If you've been reading Venom, you get it. Okay.
No, you know.
There's a lot of action this issue. There's a lot of fighting between them because Dylan has finally he's wrestling with the fact he may have to kill this version of his father. And Ms. Marvel, she plays referee. She's very much like, no, 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 let's broker some peace here. So a lot of fighting, a lot of her trying to stop the fight. You'll have to see how all that goes. But what I will tell you is the Goblin Queen shows up towards the end. She's had a change of heart that sort of puts a different spin on things and leads into the Dark Web finale. So that is what's going on in Venom issue number 16.
That makes sense too, because I didn't know why Bedlam was in Dark Web. I was like, wait, he wasn't in here before,
Yeah.
so
That's why when you did it, I asked if Mary Jane and Black Cat were in it. I knew he was going to be in it. So
yeah.
okay, here is our
So
Capello Stormbreakers variant with a little Venom wrestling with that pizza rat, that internet famous pizza rat. Then we have the uh, Baron's Planet of the Apes variant. And lastly, here is this Bucello 1 in 25 variant we're selling for $25 to our customers, where Venom's kind of turned himself into a trap for their seagulls.
it's very weird. And my last one is just wanted to let y'all know about the facsimile edition of Gargoyles #1 is out. This is a facsimile of the old Marvel Gargoyles series that came out around the time of the original show. It's a pretty pricey book now, and I don't think it's collected anywhere. So this is a pretty hard one to get to read. So it's great that Dynamite is putting out this facsimile edition if you want to go back and read the original Gargoyles series.
Yep. Even before the new series, whenever that comes in the shop, it is always easy to sell it. So
Yep.
I'm glad they're doing a facsimile. People are always looking for it. Okay, so that's not all that is out this week. Those are just the ones we were able to read. So we like to go over a list of here's other ones that are out this
Mhm.
week. Briar issue number 3 is out this week.
Along with Children of the Black Sun, number 2.
8 billion Genies continues its march forward with reprints. There's a reprint of issues 1 through 6, all of them out this week for 8 billion
You can get
Genies.
caught up. We also have Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer number 9 and Dawn Attack number 2. So double the Frazetta this week.
King Spawn number 19 is out this week.
Also, we've got Radiant Black number 21.
Savage Dragon 263.
That one has been on FOC for like 6 months, so it's great that it's finally out. We also have Walking Dead number 56.
Another indie we didn't get around to reading in time is Where Monsters Lie. Number 1 is out this week.
Another number one we didn't get a chance to read, but you can figure out what it's like. Is Rick and Morty number one?
Zombicide Day One, number 1 of 4 is out, which is going to tell a little bit of a story for the board game people.
We also have X Force number 37.
Legion of X number 10.
Captain America Sentinel of Liberty number 9.
Teach Momoko's latest in the Demon Wars. Demon War Down in Flames, number 1 is out.
And two other number ones. There was a lot this week. So we've got Breath of Shadows number 1.
And Black Tape number 1.
Yes.
So that's all the other comics that are coming out. We just try to, our show's already an hour. We try to keep it about that.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for watching. We'll be back with Comics for the Future, where we go over all the newest comics available to order. Speaking of ordering comics, again, we have that infinityflux.net site where you can sign up to be a subscriber with us to pre-order comics like the ones that we showed today. We will be selling these on the site eventually too, but right now it's all about pre-ordering them.
Setting up a pull list so you can
Yes.
be one of our family that we have. We've got some great people subscribed for us, so you can be one of those.
Yep. So thank you very much, and we will see you next time.